So I'm staying in an Airbnb in Lisbon, in Portugal. This Airbnb is really dark at nighttime. Um, the lights in here are, well, there are very few of them, and I don't know what kind of light bulbs they use, but they take a little while to brighten once you turn them on. Anyway, it's super dark. I'm using my 16 millimeter f1.4 lens at 1.4. I'm shooting at 1/50th of a second for the shutter speed, and my ISO's at 1000. Well, it's kind of going back between 800 and 1000. So that's pretty dark. Yeah. So actually, on that note, I wanted to take a quick minute and talk about why I'm shooting at 1/50th of for my shutter speed. So I normally shoot 30 frames a second, but because I'm in Europe, as you know, we use PAL here in Europe. We use NTSC in North America, PAL in Europe, right? And what that means is that a lot of the lights here in Portugal, they flicker at 50 hertz. That's obviously too fast for our eyes to detect, so we see continuous lights, but our cameras will notice that. And so I noticed when I was recording video that if I used 30 frames a second, that I was seeing some flickering in the lights. And that's true even if I go to 60 frames a second. So as a result, I had to go down to 24 frames a second, which is like all right. It's not the frame rate I'd like to use because, like I mentioned before, the iPhone uses 1/30th of a second or 30 frames a second as its standard frame rate, and I like to be able to mix my a6400 footage and my iPhone footage. So anyway, I'm shooting at 24 frames a second, and even then, because it's not, uh, uh, it's not 25 frames a second, we still do see a little bit of flickering. And actually, what you'll probably notice is the black horizontal stripes across the frame. You'll see it travel from top to bottom. It moves slowly when you're recording 24 frames a second, but if you record at 30 or 60 frames a second, you'll see that those horizontal black stripes come down quickly, and it can be very distracting. So that's why you can't, as far as I'm concerned, use 30 or 60 frames a second. Now, can you just switch the a6400 to PAL mode and then record in 25 frames a second or 50 frames a second? You can, but you have to be prepared to format your card. I don't know why, but in order to switch from NTSC mode to PAL mode, you have to format your card. And if you're like me, I think most people are like me, you keep a bunch of pictures and videos on your camera or on your SD card that never make it off the SD card. You never bother copying them off onto your computer, and so I couldn't format my card, and I didn't bring any additional SD cards, which is a shame. I suppose if I'm out and about and doing some shopping and I come across some reasonably priced SD cards, I suppose I could pick one up and just format it for PAL. But anyway, that's a little thing to bear in mind if you ever come to Europe. You might want to bring a spare SD card. That way you can format it and use it in PAL mode. The other thing I wanted to say that I noticed while shooting video here in Lisbon is that I typically have face detection on at all times, because normally I am trying to shoot video of myself or somebody else, and I want the camera to focus on the person's face. But if you're in a tourist hotspot like Lisbon, Portugal, there's going to be tons of people on the street, and you don't want the camera to constantly trying to focus on random tourists, right? You want to be able to see the scenery behind them. So you want to you want to turn face detection off. And because I switch back and forth, I do occasionally want the camera to focus on my face or Charlotte's face. You want to set up to a custom button, okay? So that's another little tip.